Good afternoon and welcome to today's webinar, The Link Between Contingent Workforce Management and the Future of Work, sponsored by ZeroChaos. We are incredibly excited to not only hear from Ardent's Christopher Dwyer and the findings from his latest research study, but we will also be joined by Matthew Levine, Chief Operating Officer at ZeroChaos, for a thrilling roundtable discussion on the future of work. Chris, take it away.
Thank you so much. Welcome. Good afternoon, good morning, good evening to everyone out there. Thank you so much for joining us today on this very exciting webinar. Those of you that follow my work and my research, this is the first webinar of the year, and it's probably one of the more exciting ones that I'm a part of. It's great to be able to not only talk about the continued evolution of contingent workforce management, but also talk and link that discussion to this great confounding concept of the future of work. My name is Christopher Dwyer, Vice President of Research at Ardent Partners. I've been an industry analyst for going on actually 13 years now. I host a weekly podcast called Contingent Workforce Weekly. I'm going to share a link in a second. But been in the space for a very long time and very excited to be here. Those of you that are interested in the contingent workforce industry, whether you're in procurement, HR, finance, or even if you are a freelancer, independent contractor, and want to keep tabs on how businesses are continuing to leverage and rely on non-employee labor, visit tiny.cc/contingent workforce weekly podcast to listen, or you could also subscribe on iTunes, Stitcher, or Google Play. New episodes go up every Wednesday morning, and we're actually making our return to the regular weekly podcast next Wednesday. So if you are a subscriber, stay tuned for that. So a little bit of background on what we're doing here today. For years, I've been writing an annual research study on the state of contingent workforce management, and have been, again, writing some iteration of this for pretty much the entirety of my career as an industry analyst and thought leader. The actual state of contingent workforce management dates back to the fall of 2013, a few months after I joined Ardent Partners. And really, it was a way, of course, to look at all the market trends that are evolving in the industry, showing of course, the rampant growth of contingent labor and non-employee labor, non-employee talent, and of course, all of the interesting aspects that are a big part of this growth and evolution, from technology and third-party services to really how enterprises are making use of the non-employee labor in their talent. And of course, when we talk today, we're going to be talking about this concept of the future of work and how it fits into everything that we discuss in regards to contingent workforce management. So every year we write this grand epic research study. We ask questions spanning from how companies are managing their contingent labor today, how they perceive the impact of their non-employee talent, who's running the show, whether it's procurement or HR, what general capabilities, what analytical capabilities, how are they managing aspects like SOW and services, all the way to what technologies and solutions are they using, as well as how they perceive this concept of the future of work and what impact areas and what drivers of the future of work, like artificial intelligence, like machine learning, like blockchain, like online staffing and digital staffing, which aspects of this concept of the future of work are actually in place today, and which of those do they plan on implementing in the future. So this brand new research study was really an interesting way to talk about the convergence of the evolution of talent, the evolution of technology, and of course this concept of the future of work. So I use the word convergence a lot. It is it's a favorite term of not only myself, but also some of the other analysts at Ardent. When we talk about convergence, really talking about the way that things are happening in the industry at light speed, and they're crashing into each other. Everything is sort of mixing and integrating, and really, this is a quote directly from the new research study, but there a new range of innovation that's actively driving visibility, accessibility, and the continued consumerization of the global workforce and its business. And why do we talk about consumerization, flexibility, and visibility? It all comes back to a concept of what we call agility. You may have heard that phrase a lot, but agility really is the idea that as a business, you can respond dynamically to real-time business challenges and pressures. So anything that comes up, whether it's something to do with supply chain, something to do with a key partner, something to do with a product, or a core business process or a set of operations, you have the ability today with your flexible talent, with your flexible technology, and all the other aspects of innovation today, you can react in an agile, on-demand manner. And really, that's what it's all coming down to today. And so this phrase, future of work, really linked back to the concept of that I've been talking about for a couple of years, but the new world of work. We're living in a new age. We're living in a very exciting age where things are happening that are affecting this one main question: how does work get done? So years and years ago, whenever we talked about talent, we talked about business processes, we talked about supplier management, we talked about anything to do with procurement or HR, typically, or even finance, obviously, there's a question of how much is it going to cost, or what's the budget? And now you have this question at hand that's really driving everything to do with how work is addressed, and that is, how does work actually get done? And so that question is really sparking this idea of a new world of work where there are all these elements in place that are really converging together to change how businesses operate today. And I want to go around the wheel here and talk about each one. The consumerization of business, very simply put, think about all of the great on-demand applications, access points, content that you consume in your personal life. Think about how easy it is for you to order a pizza, to order a taxi via Uber, order something on Amazon. I mean, there's so many different consumer access points today that are really available on demand, where I can really satisfy any number of needs in an on-demand manner. I can order a car, I can order a pizza, I can order groceries, and have them delivered in 2 hours. I mean, the idea of this consumerization of business is really exciting because it translates into the idea that you have this merging of concepts, where the idea that everything that we have in our consumer world is now being blended into the world of business, where in this world, we expect things to happen pretty much on demand. We want insights on demand. We want reports on demand. We want visibility on demand. We want operations. We want processes to be executed in near real time. And the idea here is that if we can have all those great things in an on-demand manner, why can't we have talent? And that's where this idea of the new world of work really starts to get cooking, where I can find a freelancer, a contractor, a professional service pretty much instantaneously. And that's changing how work gets done. And on top of that, you have the idea of transformative and flexible thinking. This idea that things are happening out there, things are happening in a very, very fast manner. Like I said, light speed. Everything's happening seemingly at light speed. There's the idea that from the bottom tier of your organization all the way up to the executive boardroom, we are starting to transform the way we think about everything. So we're not thinking about business operations like we did 10 or 15 years ago. We're not thinking about talent the way we did 10 or 15 years ago. And that's really the way that businesses should run, and they're starting to run. The idea that we need to transform the way we think. We need to have a much better outlook. We need to not only keep up with the times, but we need to understand what technologies are out there, what new strategies and approaches are out there, and implement those within our organization. And then the bottom two buckets there, traditional CWM technology and future of work innovation. Of course, technology is a big piece of all of this idea of the new world of work. Think about your managed service providers and your vendor management systems that have been around for decades and have always provided some level, of value to your contingent workforce program. Those types of solutions, especially VMS, have been evolving so much to keep up with not only the demand of contingent workforce programs today, but also how they're structured and also the requirements for contingent workforce management today. We can't have the same functionality we had 5 or 10 years ago. We need to be, of course, at the top of our game from the technology perspective. And you see that traditional and core contingent workforce platforms have really kept up with not only the demand but the evolution of the space as well. And then you have your future of work innovation. I would say raise your hand if you're using some level of AI today, and you are. We all use Siri. We use Amazon's Alexa or the Echo device in our homes. We have smart homes. We have all different ways of leveraging AI to support core facets of our personal lives. And we're starting to see that obviously in the world of work and the world of business, where our analytics are being supported by machine learning. We're using chatbots to take over certain aspects or certain tactical aspects of our work that we don't have time to do anymore because we're focused on more strategic thinking and more strategic activity. Solutions and platforms like augmented reality and blockchain, those are very hot in the consumer and the business, consumer and personal world, and we're starting to see that type of future of work innovation have an impact on the world of work. Interconnected systems and networks, we've heard of this concept called Internet of Things, but really the idea is that everything's connected in some way. Think of your core enterprise solutions being integrated with other systems across the enterprise to not only execute business processes in a much quicker fashion, but to also leverage data and intelligence from pretty much from around the world, around the globe, in terms of the systems and the solutions you have in place. It's really exciting to be able to know that I can get insights from ERP, my DMS, my HR, human capital management suite, my AP, my procure-to-pay platforms, and I can have that all come to me very quickly and very easily and review that in a real-time, on-demand manner. And then finally, the evolution of talent. We wouldn't really be talking about this new world of work if we didn't have the underlying factor of the evolution of contingent labor, the evolution of talent. The fact that over the past 10 years or so, we're seeing more and more organizations obviously rely on non-employee labor and non-employee talent, and that's critical in talking about the future of work and talking about this new world of work, because there's the idea that talent is evolving, and the way we find talent and engage talent is evolving as well. So very quickly, I want to go over some of these benchmarks. I don't like to hit everyone with too much data. It's really great for our research, but in a presentation format, it's not good to just spit out numbers. One thing I want to point out here is that even though we're seeing tremendous growth in the contingent workforce and in non-employee labor and talent, we're seeing this sharp drop in the amount of that labor and talent that's actually accounted for in budgeting, planning, and forecasting. So essentially, this is sort of a quantitative way for us to put a metric on visibility. So the way to think about this here is that nearly 68% of all non-employee talent, labor, contingent labor, SOW services, all of that is unaccounted for, and that means we don't have visibility into it. So even though there's a lot of exciting, fun stuff happening in the world of work, really the hard truth at the end of the day is that there's still too many businesses that I feel that don't have enough visibility, and they really can't control not only what they're spending, but how these workers are impacting their organization from compliance perspectives and from actual quality of work perspectives as well. And you see here that some of that visibility is really affecting how talent is engaged and the impact of that talent, where you have a pretty mediocre average level of non-employee talent that not only completes projects on time and on budget, but less than 50% of that non-employee talent would be rehired or re-engaged for future projects. And it shows that, yeah, we're growing from a talent perspective, our talent pools are growing, but we're not rehiring or re-engaging the right people. There's some type of disconnect there. So hopefully today we're able to talk about that a little bit more and talk about how companies can really get over that gap. So I talked about the concept of agility a few minutes ago, but think of it this way. You want to be able to react to all of these business challenges in real time in a dynamic manner. No organization wants to spend weeks figuring out how to react to something bad that's happening in their product development team, or their marketing team, or their sales team, or even their finance operational teams. You don't want to be the organization that has no way to react or no way to answer the call when those things happen. And I'm not saying that contingent workforce management and being perfect from that perspective is the only way to be agile, but talent and non-employee talent are very key cogs in this idea of agility. The idea that we as a business, our top challenge is that we want to be more agile. And so when we look at our talent, we look at our workforce, that is a key component of being more agile. If we know that in 6 weeks, one of our competitors is going out to market with a big product, well, we can hire people very quickly and very easily that can help us understand how we can compete or what changes we can make to our product very quickly. Again, if we've got big problems in sales, in marketing, in finance, and we want to be more agile in how we're reacting to the financial pressures, the market, the business pressures that are happening out there, that talent is available and we can find it in an on-demand manner. And the idea of agile talent, that's another phrase that's floated out there. It's simply put, it's the idea that you have top-tier, skill-set heavy, high-quality talent that's coming in and out of your organization in an agile manner. They're not FTEs, they're not employees, but they have the ability to come into your organization when you need them, and they're gone when you don't need them. That's simply put, that's what it is. One key element that I do want to talk about here, we do have a lot to cover, is the idea that maybe even 4 or 5 years ago, even a few years ago, when we looked at the top challenges for organizations today, you see that the bottom number there, 40% for the need to reduce overall workforce costs, that for years, for literally 9 or 10 years running, that was the number one challenge when it came to talent or workforce management. Reduce costs, improve cost savings. And we see here this gigantic shift in how companies are thinking about their workforce, that it's agility is their top challenge, not cost or budget. So talking about the idea of work, again, like I said, the question today isn't how much is this going to cost or how are we going to do it. It's how is work actually going to get done? How are we going to understand the requirements of a project? Who is the best? Who's the best fit for it? And we see here that the vast majority of organizations are aligning the requirements of work and new projects against the total talent pool. And they're not just looking at who we have on staff now, but we're also looking at our curated talent pools, our automated talent pools from third-party systems or solutions, and figuring out, all right, we had someone with this exact skill set, contract that worked for us 6 months ago. Let's get them on the phone. Let's send them an email. Let's figure out if they can come on board and start for us in 2 days. It's very interesting to see that in a world where you have 40% of your talents considered non-employee, it just makes sense at the end of the day that whenever a new need arises that requires talent, you look at your total talent pool. You just don't look at a small sliver of your organization. And then online staffing and digital staffing, you're hearing a lot about online talent platforms, freelancer management systems, that FMS, freelancer management systems. That phrase is sort of, not died down a little bit, but you're seeing a lot less discussion around FMS and more around online staffing and automation. So that's another interesting avenue as well, that companies have the ability to tap into a whole new source of talent there. And so top focal areas for today's contingent workforce programs, it's interesting to note that when we ask organizations in this research study, excuse me, I'm like a lot of you, getting over a cold that I've had for about 2 weeks now, so apologies for the not ideal voice today. When we asked organizations, what are your top focal areas? It's very interesting to note that you see this great sort of this broad range of areas. It's not just one area that organizations are focused. I mean, there's only an 8% gap between number 1 and number 4 here, but you see organizations today, when they look at their contingent workforce programs, they want to improve talent engagement, they want to improve how they manage services in SOW, which of course, that is a topic that we could spend hours on another time. I know that a lot of you out there, when you look at your non-employee spending, SOW and services is usually the biggest bucket, which is one of the reasons why when I talk about this, I can't imagine an organization attacking this alone without a VMS or an MSP partner. And again, that's going to be a big thing as 2018 unfolds, where organizations start to look a little more closely at that area. And then continuing on, data and intelligence, obviously visibility is paramount, and then technology. I mean, you mix all these areas together, and you see here that the average modern day contemporary digital workforce program is really multifaceted, and organizations want to improve multiple areas. And so the evolution of talent, that was one part of the new world of work wheel that we talked about 10 minutes ago. But the idea that we are really reshaping how we're finding talent. We're not just using staffing suppliers. We're not just using our own personal networks. We're tapping into social media and social networks to engage talent. We're using online talent, online staffing platforms, and we're even tapping into new elements as well. The employee brand, you see so much discussion about there in social media, but having a solid or a positive employee brand is a great way to attract new talent. And again, there's many ways that organizations can do that. They can improve their standing in the market. They can be more charitable. They can be, they have a very positive outlook. I mean, there are many. You think of how many big brands out there have such negative feedback or negative standing in the market, and the reason why a lot of those organizations are failing or have that negative criteria, and they're having problems finding talent, is that people just don't want to work for them. So employer branding becoming more important. So it's very interesting there. And so I know that the question at hand really is, Chris, what is the link between what we're doing in contingent workforce management, this idea of the future of work? It's all linked in some key way here. And think about it from this convergence perspective. And I'm getting in 3 buckets here. Look at it from a talent perspective. Continued war for talent. I mean, I know that the HR folks or my friends from human capital management on the line today are probably sick of hearing that. There is always an ongoing war for talent. You have to do what you can as an organization to find the talent that you need. Find those game-changing individuals that can come into your organization and spark innovation, can spark growth, and can spark new ideas. And it's not the easiest thing in the world to do. We're not living in a business world or a market where it's very easy to find, long-term FTE-based talent. A lot of very talented individuals today have so many options, and it's really interesting to see that organizations are continuing this, to fight the great war for talent. Again, at the end of the day, talent is often the number one competitive differentiator between organizations today, and you want to do everything you can to find the talent that you need. So continuing on that track, you have the growth of the non-employee workforce. 40% of the average company's workforce today is considered non-employee. And I know some of you out there today may be thinking, all right, well, we're probably a lot lower than that. We're probably at 35%. We're at 30%. There are companies out there that are at 50, 55, 60%. Every organization is experiencing, or most organizations are experiencing, some type of growth in the percentage of the utilization of contingent labor. You have the shift in business thinking, and this, of course, is linked to this. I hate the term gig economy, but unfortunately, it is very hot, and you need to talk about it. But the gig economy, the best thing that came out of it was that I think it forced a lot of business leaders to think differently about their talent. The fact that there are a lot more freelancers out there, there are a lot more contractors, there are a lot more very talented individuals that want to work on a flexible basis. So that's interesting as well. And then the idea for agility and boundaryless operations, we don't want to be, we don't need barriers. We don't want barriers between us and our systems, us and our processes, us and our talent. We want to be able to react in a dynamic and real-time manner, and talent is the way to do that. And I included a bullet here on generational specific talent engagement, but I hate to use the word millennials. I mean, technically, I'm at the very edge there. I'm considered a millennial, even though I don't feel like it. But there's the idea that, again, you're dealing with millennials, you're dealing with Gen Z, You're dealing with a lot older crop of veteran workers that may be exiting the workforce soon or are retired but are thinking about just maybe working 10 or 15 hours a week. So organizations today, when it comes to talent, they are really leveraging generational specific strategies to tap into all that. And then where does that get linked to technology in the future of work? Well, you have the continuing evolution of vendor management systems and other core platforms and services like MSP. It's really interesting to note that, I thought, I've obviously always been a big proponent of the VMS model, but it's interesting to note, that over the past few years, VMS really has become the most important solution when it comes to talent and it comes to contingent workforce management. It's the nexus of contingent workforce management. And of course, you see that so many organizations today are treating it as true enterprise technology where, maybe 10 years ago it was, more of a point system. We're living in a world where it's really tough to manage contingent labor and non-employee talent without automation in place. And of course, I talked about this, but really the rise of digital online staffing, the fact that I can use so many different online staffing or digital staffing outlets to find the talent I need. Some of them are tailored towards a certain skill set or a certain industry, or others too are very general where you could find any number of type of workers. And then finally, the integration of all of these future of work innovation into the business today. AI, robotic process automation, blockchain, augmented reality, and machine learning as well. You have this convergence where more organizations are starting to look at these technologies, these new innovations to manage their talent. And then, what's the biggest takeaway here? It's everything that we're doing here in contingent workforce management, what we're doing from a technology perspective, all answers one question: how is work going to get done? How are we going to optimize how work gets done? We are looking to apply new skill sets to new projects in an on-demand manner. We want to be able to forecast and plan for talent gaps in the future. We want to be able today to know a year from now who we're going to need. How is work going to get addressed a year from now? And of course, that's not going to happen without seamless, holistic, boundaryless processes and systems that are integrated, that are interconnected, that rely on both traditional and new innovation as well to support all of these great ideas. So again, at the end of the day, what's the link? The link is that contingent workforce management is a supporting beam for the future of work. So very quickly here, I want to dive a little bit more into this idea of the future of work before Matthew from ZeroChaos and I talk a bit about some great questions here as part of our executive roundtable. So I put together this very basic future of work model. I know that a lot of individuals out there are very, it's a confounding concept. And you'll see one of the questions that Matt and I will address today is, how do you define the future of work, or what is it? And really, you can talk to 10 different people and you can get 10 different definitions. The way that I think about the future of work model and the idea of the future of work is that there's several key components. New thinking, new ideas really spark the idea that we can transform how work is done. We don't have to use outdated methods anymore. We can apply innovation everywhere, not just in a certain area. That's really the great thing about AI or augmented reality is those types of innovations can be applied to pretty much any function across the organization. From the talent perspective, it's rethinking and having these new strategies and how talent is linked to work and projects. How can we figure out a better way to find talent? How can we better apply core skill sets that we already have to projects that are coming up? How can we better manage our blended workforce? And then finally, we talked about this a little bit, but the idea of interconnected processes, systems, solutions, workers, and partners. Think about the Internet of Things, this funky term that's been thrown around for a couple of years now. But the idea that everything's connected, every system, processes, solution is connected in some way. And we have to be able to leverage that interconnectivity for the good of the business. And really, the good of the business really is how we're addressing work, how are things going to get done. So one interesting thing, and it's always good to be able to come down to earth a little bit, but when we asked organizations in our research study, how do you perceive artificial intelligence and machine learning, which I think are probably the two biggest drivers, technology drivers of the future of work, you only see that 13% today are utilizing it in some fashion. And, for someone like me, that's you can hear the excitement in my voice. I'm very, very always thrilled to be able to talk about new technology and, new innovations. But when I got the figure back, I honestly wasn't surprised. We are still in the infancy phase of AI and machine learning and blockchain and RPA and all those great future of work innovations. It's when you look at the next couple of years where the picture, I think, starts to get a little bit bigger and starts to become a little bit clearer, is the idea that, you have almost 50% of organizations plan to implement these tools or these functionalities within the next couple of years. And I think that that's where the real discussion is that, these aren't game changers now, but they're going to be in a couple of years. And so, we talk about the idea of the future of work. There are always roadblocks, and in some of these here are very, very similar to other roadblocks, for implementing new technology, or maybe, having some type of barrier to growth and expansion of the business. But a lot of it comes down to two things: not having a technology budget, not having enough budget for innovation, and then organizational culture. Organizational culture can kill the future organization. Not having an awareness to what's happening in the market, not understanding the impact of new technology and new thinking out there. There are a lot of great business leaders that are really, they're tapping into the gig economy. They are understanding what their talent means to them. They understand this concept of the future of work. They know that business is changing, technology is changing, how we address work and how we address business processes are changing. We need to, of course, understand how all of this can impact us and use it to our benefit. And unfortunately, the other side of the coin is that there are a lot of business leaders that refuse to look outside the window, and they're not tapping into new innovation, and they really don't want to embrace some of the changes that are happening in the market. And so I've got three quick future of work indicators here. Number one is attracting new generations of talent. I talked about generational specific talent engagement here, but look at some of these ideas that organizations are putting in place when it comes to how they become a desirable organization to work for. Flexible work environments. I've worked remotely for such a long time now that it's second nature to me, but there are a lot of organizations out there that that don't allow their workers to work remotely or work from home or telecommute. But with a lot of the tools that are in place today, when it comes to everything simple from we're using WebEx today, but everything from conferencing and collaborative technology all the way to augmented reality and virtual reality, it's very easy now for us to collaborate, even if we're not really in the same time zone. Making the workplace more social, more fun. Of course, that's a great way to attract younger talent. But I think that more importantly, it's promoting a culture of learning and development. I think that when you look at all of these aspects, that may be the most important thing, that these newer generations of talent, again, in this concept of the future of work, millennials especially, they want to be able to take something away from their time at different businesses, whether they're working, in a flexible manner or they're a traditional worker. They want to be able to learn. They want to develop their own minds and their own skill sets. And, and this is a big future of work indicator that companies are taking a different path when it comes to different generations of talent. Future of work indicator number two, the talent experience becomes critical. Think about the idea that you are, think about the employee experience. A lot of organizations talk about how to keep employees engaged. I think about it even higher up. How do you keep all of your talent engaged? Not just your employees, but your contractors and your freelancers. But again, accommodating workplace environments, making sure that everyone has the tools and the technologies that they need. They can learn digitally. They can learn in person. They have access to the organizational leaders that have been there for a while that have a lot of knowledge. And then employee wellness and well-being. I know that I'm flying through this pretty quickly for the sake of time, but these are very interesting concepts to think in the world of work. I mean, 5 or 10 years ago, was any business really focused on employee wellness and making that a priority? No, it's really the idea of talent and the evolution of talent has really changed, and businesses are starting to buy in. And then future of work indicator number 3, total workforce management becomes a reality. This comes from a report that I wrote in the first half of 2017. But if your workforce is becoming more contingent heavy, it's becoming more non-employee heavy, well, doesn't it make sense to have some type of program that's centralized, standardized, and can manage both types of talent under the same banner, systems, processes, and operations and capabilities? And what we have here is this idea of total workforce management, where you have integrated workforce management technology. Does VMS integrate with RPO or human capital systems? Are procurement and HR collaborating? Do we have a picture into our total talent data? Do we have data on both, similar data on both our FTEs and our contingent workers? Do we have a total talent acquisition strategy? Can we find talent via one way? Is there one standardized set of processes that we can use for both traditional and non-traditional talent? I mean, total workforce management is a topic that we could talk about for hours. I do want to move on, but this is a big part, I think, of the future of work, the idea that companies are starting to take the myth out of total workforce management and making it more of a reality. And finally, one of the great things about the new research study was that I had the opportunity to put together this future of work framework, which I think allows organizations to figure out where they are and where they need to be. And I think the vast majority of organizations today are at that adaptation phase. They're starting to transform the way they think. They're starting to change the culture across the organization. They're figuring out what barriers they have to adopt new technology, and they're just starting. They may not be, buying fully into AI and machine learning and all those other cool future of work era technologies, excuse me, but they're definitely open to it, and that's adapting, and that is where a lot of companies are at today, and there's not a problem being there. The adoption phase, I think, is where things get more exciting, where you see a lot more business processes being augmented with future of work type technology, like AI and machine learning. A lot of organizations today are using chatbots. They're using machine learning algorithms and technology to boost their analytics and data. You see that there are companies that are starting to move into the adoption phase. Companies buying into total workforce management. I mean, that's one of the critical elements as well. The idea that in a few years, it could be 45% of the workforce is considered non-employee. Are we going to hit that time when it's 50-50? Probably, and that's where total workforce management is going to come in handy. The balance between new technology and traditional technology. Companies aren't going to get anywhere just using the traditional systems today, but they're not going to get anywhere using just the new systems today. You need to have a great balance between what's worked well for years and what's going to work well in the next couple of years. Excuse me. And of course, optimizing how work is done. What can we do as an organization to make work easier, to ensure that we have the best mix of skill sets and talent and processes and so forth. And then finally, agility. You probably knew that I was going to bring this out at some point, but this is a future state. I think that we're going to have smart talent engagement in the future where I need, someone plugged in, a project and, the system automatically spits out, a handful of services or workers that have the right skill sets and engages them automatically. You have AI-driven indicators. You're starting to see some of this today when, obviously your Amazon Echo device or your Google Smart Home can tell you when you're running out of something and you can order it automatically. So you see that in the world of work as well. And finally, innovation in terms of boundaryless, holistic work optimization. Mouthful, what does it mean, Chris? It just means that everything's connected. Everything's automated. Everything is seamless. Everything is very easy. There's no There are no manual tasks or tactical measures that are pulling us down. Everything can be done in real time. Everything can be done in an on-demand manner. And, of course, that ultimately optimizes how work is done. So we've got about 20 minutes left in the webinar. I'm going to invite Matthew from ZeroChaos. Matthew, thank you so much for joining us today. Very exciting roundtable ahead.
My pleasure. Thanks for having me.
And, of course, I'm Christopher Dwyer. I've been here for a while. But Matt and I are going to talk about a few different items here. Some of them are related to future work. Some of them are related to contingent workforce management. Our hope is we're able to really help everyone out there today learn a little bit more about what's happening out there in the space and how to structure their contingent workforce programs and how to really deal with this concept of the future of work in the year ahead. So Matthew, I'll kick things off. And again, this is really the question at hand, and I could ask, again, 10 different people, get 10 different answers. What is the future of work? How do you define it?
I define the future of work as a boundaryless and borderless blend where we're utilizing a balance between full-time workers, contingent workers, and what I'll just call machine workers to provide the requisite skills to compete in the needs of the organization. And one of the things that when I think about this, for me, it really comes down to trying to understand what the quality and employee needs are, or what the end result project needs are of the organization, and what the best way to fulfill that is. So I think that when we talk about AI specifically, what we're seeing is AI disrupt processes that are easily repetitive or things that can be learned for a continuous improvement perspective. And I think where we're seeing that balance take place is I think that we're seeing sort of the upskilling of workers, or rather the need to upskill workers to fulfill the needs where the AI basically either can't do it at this moment in time, or to train the AI, or to be there to almost manage the AI to ensure that the processes that are being put forth don't have sort of a hiring bias associated with it, or don't have a bias from the perspective of the work deliverable.
Perfect. Thank you, Matthew. That's where it is right there. Matthew brought up a bunch of really good points, but and I don't really have too much to add. I know we've talked about it throughout the course of the event today, but he brought up a bunch of good points. AI, boundaryless. Really, that should be the goal for every organization, is to have processes and systems that are boundaryless, that are seamless and holistic. And I know that those are a lot of buzzwords, and we use a lot of buzzwords, but at the end of the day, they're buzzwords for a reason. They have impact. And when you're talking about the future of work, those items are incredibly critical. So we'll move ahead. Obviously, Matthew represents ZeroChaos here. So from your perspective, what is the role of traditional workforce management solutions in the future of work? What role do managed service providers play, and what will be the continued role of VMS?
Sure. I think what we're seeing at this point, just based upon either sort of legislative changes that are starting to conceptually loosen the definition of employee and IC, and sort of you're starting to see a little bit of erosion of co-employment risk, or at least I think we're starting to see a little bit of erosion related to that. I think the role of sort of the CWM program really is aligning with the customer on the customer objectives to ensure that where that business or where that future employer is trying to get to, that all the potential channels of identifying those worker, or rather identifying the ways to complete that project, are being consumed and are being evaluated. So let me kind of give you an example. When we think about a supply and demand issue, so if we have a shortage of a specific type of technology worker in Silicon Valley or in New York City, or really in any market, one of the things that sort of legacy would say is, okay, let me find more suppliers in that area. Maybe they have a talent pipeline or a bench sort of process to think through. And really what the CWM program of the future is going to do is it's really going to look at different channels. So whether it's at online staffing, whether it's looking at that total talent pool, whether it's thinking about AI-related solutions to potentially pre-vet candidates or suggest ways for a project to be broken out into multiple facets, it's really going to become a separation of sort of an objective tactical doer versus a strategic guider, because that's effectively what that skill set within that CWM program needs to be. It can't be that tactical way with which we sort of viewed the world in years past. It really needs to be much more forward-thinking, because in the end, the customers that are engaging firms for either a VMS technology or for an MSP solution, they have a core skill set with which their organization does. And ZeroChaos as a CWM doesn't try to play in the insurance space or in the technology space. That's where they should be playing. And effectively what we should be doing is we should be guiding them with strategies based upon all these new channels to make their business more productive and really show that return.
Great. Good answer. The one thing I'll add here is that, I've done a ton of research on the MSPs and VMS platforms for a great number of years. And I talked about this a little bit earlier as well, but a lot more organizations are looking to to expand the reach of their contingent workforce program. They're looking to do more with it. They're noticing that they're obviously experiencing a growth in the number of contingent workers that are going through their system or their program. They're starting to tap into new markets. They're starting to utilize different types of non-employee talent in different skill set areas. And this is really where I think there's still a lot of power, for VMS technology to be so relevant in the future. Is that I can't imagine, and I've said this before, an organization that has an in-house program that's not using technology in some way to manage all these aspects. With all the different moving parts of contingent workforce management, whether it's SOW, whether it's services, whether it's analytics and project management, performance management, those elements are still going to be very viable in this future of work model. I think that one thing that unfortunately gets I think overlooked is that there are a lot of traditional elements that are still going to be in place. SOW is never going to go away. Supplier management is never going to go away. And even though things, aspects like AI and machine learning are going to make those functional areas a lot more easier to execute and obviously automate a lot more of that and take it off of the plate of the human, there's still going to be a need for those types of functional areas within contingent workforce management. So that's why I think that, in 5 or 10 years, those platforms are going to still just be as viable as they are today. And we're talking so much about all the most hip technology out there today that people are talking about, AI, and of course its cousin, machine learning. Matthew, I'll ask you, how will AI and machine learning impact the future state of work?
Well, I don't think they're going to replace all workers. I do think what they'll do is they'll make things easier and faster. And in the end, when we think about allocating resources, right? And obviously, cost savings within, whether it's a contingent workforce program or overall within an organization, the worker is always the most important and also the most expensive part. And anything that we can do to allocate those dollars to other areas, whether it's for R&D or for innovation or to put forth a higher quality product for the consumer, it's going to be helpful. And when I think about AI and when I think about it within sort of the staffing and recruiting space, it really should assist with either helping to pre-select, helping to provide additional forecasting capability, help us to accelerate, sort of an ability to pick the right candidate and to really drive the quality of the worker. I think that's where it's going to get to. The only sort of watch out that I always like to bring up when we talk about AI in the employment space is that I don't think it's the end-all, be-all. I still think that AI needs to be monitored, especially from the perspective of how it's trained. So, oftentimes we try to create sort of the quote-unquote ideal candidate, and depending upon sort of where you fall in the sort of the AI area, one, you might say that it will find me the best candidate without bias, and the other side will say it has a tremendous amount of bias built into the AI from how the AI is trained. So I think it's a matter of just continuously iterating on what we're asking AI to do and continuing to validate the output of what the AI answer is providing to us.
Well put, Matthew. I couldn't have said that better. I mean, really, that's really all what it's all about. I think that the companies, again, I called it an adaptation phase. Matthew here is really talking about validating what we're getting out of AI and machine learning functionality. A lot of companies today, and Matt brought up a good point where it's not going to replace all workers. It's not a doomsday scenario. I think of the Terminator movies where machines are on the world. We're not going to be living in that type of environment anytime soon. But the thing to think about is looking at these, especially looking at a future state of work, looking at them as a very augmentative platforms that can just help work it done faster and better, essentially. I know it's pretty dumbed down, but that's what it is. How can we get data faster? How can we get insights faster? Are there tactical measures across our organization that we can automate, via AI? I mean, chatbots, I know they've been around for a while, but they really are probably the biggest representation of AI today. And a lot of organizations are using them to do everything from answer employee questions. A lot of companies have an internal intranet where, they can learn about their benefits, about 401k and all that. Applying a chatbot to that frees up HR's time tremendously, using chatbots to, talent, to essentially pre-screen or pre-interview talent. I mean, that's aspects like that seem very simplified, but that's what AI was built to do, is built to make things easier for humans. It's, mimic human thinking. What can we do to ensure that our time as humans, as very important humans, can be spent doing more strategic activity? So the future state of work, I think we're going to see a lot more usage out of these types of functionalities. But machine learning can be amazing in terms of helping a company really completely retool their analyticals, their analytics. The idea that we can have predictive analytics, scenario building. We can understand what our company may look like in 6 months or even 6 years, and be able to have the insights today to make to take necessary measures. So very interesting points there. And so let's take it back a little bit to the Contingent Workforce Management Program. Matthew, I'll ask you again. How can everyone structure their contingent workforce programs to be prepping for this future state of work and the impact of the future of work?
Well, I think the number one thing is to make sure that as a company that you are strategizing correctly with your contingent workforce management partner to ensure that the contingent workforce management partner is aligned in understanding of where the future of the business is going. And what I mean by that is if there are anticipated shifts that are supposed to take place in 2018, 2019, 2020 beyond what is currently happening at your existing organization, that CWM program needs to be aware of what those are so that they're not caught behind sort of the 8 ball within trying to identify, a new quality of talent or identifying a new area to explore. You really want to make sure that the CWM team is in lockstep, both from a technology perspective and a capabilities perspective, understanding what automation you're inputting so you can make sure that they're sort of married together. The biggest thing that I see is if a disconnect exists between those two sort of facets, between the CWM program and the goals of the what I'll just call the end user customer, there could be a very challenging breakdown, and as those two things spread, it becomes harder and harder to close the gap.
Great, thank you, Matthew. We're actually going to move on to the final roundtable question, and to be respectful of everyone's time, we have a couple minutes left here. What big changes are coming to the world of work in 2018? Matthew, you can go first.
Sure. I think one, like I said earlier, is going to be legislative. I think you're going to see a lessening concern on that co-employment side. I think you're going to see a lessening concern on the definition of, or a loosening in the definition of what an IC is versus what a full-time employee or a contingent worker is. I think you're going to see a continued use, obviously, of AI in trying to do vetting of candidates, of figuring out what things can be automated. The only sort of change that I don't anticipate coming is I don't anticipate seeing a boost of skills of workers. And what I mean by that is there continues to be a significant disconnect in this market between the skills that are needed, so the demand, and the supply of the worker that's able to fulfill those. And I know everyone loves sort of this concept of AI and Alexa and comparing sort of worker to what you buy on Amazon. It's critically important to realize that there's a significant nuance that is a difference there between buying a commoditized box of tissues that lives in a warehouse versus trying to get this sort of on-demand immediate pool of talent. So when you think about as an organization what your future needs are, there does need to be a little bit more sort of holistic planning around where these people are, where these workers are, and how we can engage them, because it's not quite as simple, even though we wish it was, and we wish it was sometimes, as plugging and playing a group of workers to come in this week and do this project, go away for a month, and come back next week and do a specific project. So I think 2018 is going to be a year of trying to get to an idealized state and continuing to prep for it and continuing to plan for what the future is. But I think there's a long journey, Chris, on this future sort of future of work with which we're working in.
Yeah, and I couldn't agree more. I mean, that's why in our future of work framework that we published in the report, the research study, I had said that the vast majority of companies are still in that adaptation phase. They're trying to figure out how does this all work, and what can it do, and how can we begin to transform the way we think about talent and work. And so I agree with Matthew here. I mean, I think 2018 is going to be a big year for companies as they start to figure out a little bit more, what do these new technologies, these new innovations, what do they mean for me and my business? I want to be more agile. I want to tap into on-demand labor, but how can I do that? How can I do it effectively in a compliant manner, and doing it so I'm not sacrificing quality and I'm maximizing how I'm trying to optimize the way work is done at our business. Unfortunately, we are out of time. There are a couple questions in the queue that we can follow up via email. On behalf of ZeroChaos, Scott, Matthew, and the team, thank you guys so much for putting this great webinar together. Matthew, thanks again for being a great partner here. On behalf of Ardent Partners, I want to thank everyone for joining us today. Feel free to reach out if you have any questions or comments. Thank you so much for joining. Have a great day, everyone.
Ladies and gentlemen, that does conclude our event. You may now disconnect your lines. Presenters, please hold.